Hi, how are you? I'm so happy you're here. I'm so sorry about the delay. We were having some technical issues. We first got into Tara's phone and my computer, but I couldn't hear her well, so we moved to a tablet. So now I can hear Tara well. And since she's our special guest, we needed her to be, that the sound was perfect. So sorry for that. This Facebook Live will last between 30 to 45 minutes, maybe longer, depends on you. And we will talk today about sex and trauma prevention. Our special guest is an American certified sex therapist. If you want to find out more about our Facebook Lives, I will put the link so you can subscribe and you will receive information about it. Most of them are in Spanish, though. Some of them I do in English, so you can see them both. And I want to remind you that Excede tu Potencial, my company, has the purpose of helping companies refocus positively the levels of stress of their employees to improve productivity, relationships, and results. And as a transformational coach, I help successful professionals to build the life they want with fulfillment and balance. So, our special guest today is Tara Galeano. She knows that there is pleasure in the body beyond our wildest dreams, and every woman can access it. She discovered her own body after leaving her 25-year marriage, realizing that she had given so much of herself away. She knew that she needed to come back to the inherent wisdom of the body. Through reconnecting with her body, Tara was able to know what was true for her, how best to proceed from this wisdom, what was true pleasure, and most importantly, how to teach these lessons to other women who are clamoring for the same truth so that they too could also transform their lives and reclaim their sensuality. So, Tara, it's so good to have you here. Do you have some words to our audience today, please?
I'm so honored to be here, and I really look forward to a great conversation where we can deepen this conversation about sex and trauma and the body.
That's great. Yeah, we will have an amazing conversation. And if you have any questions for Tara, please write them down on the chat box. If you want to comment as well. But the first question actually goes to you guys, to the audience. And my first questions to do is, what activities do you do to release stress? So put it on the chat box, and we will talk a little bit more about it. And while you write that, I want to ask you, Tara. I want to start the questions now with you. What is TRE, or what some people call tree? What does that mean? What is it about? Can you explain it to us, please?
Yeah. So TRE is trauma releasing exercises or tension
Mhm.
relieving exercises, and they are one of the best stress relievers that I've encountered in my professional career. I have used them personally as a car accident victim, car accident survivor. I was in multiple car accidents, and the insomnia, the stress, the
Mhm.
experience of hyperarousal in my nervous system was so
Mhm.
intense I couldn't relax while I was driving. And the
Wow.
trauma releasing exercises were really the only modality that were able to impact me enough where I was able to sleep, where I was able to feel comfortable driving again, where I was able to
Wow.
really relax. And for me, it was so wonderful because it bypassed the storyline. I didn't have to go into the narrative again of what happened in my car accidents, which seemed to be similar to a lot of the trauma modalities that I was introduced to. And I wanted something that was actually physiologically based. And so, trauma releasing exercises is a shaking that happens in our physiology to release tension and really restore the nervous system. So, the tension is where the shaking happens when we allow it.
Oh, that's great. I now that you're explaining it, it's really interesting because what I know and I've been doing, and I know it helps as well for trauma, is tapping.
Yes.
So, but this is, I mean, the effect is similar as tapping, but it's a different procedure, or how would you say it's alike and it's different?
Great question. So it's alike in that it is an experience of coming back to calmness and really
Mhm.
restoring the nervous system. So I think the tapping does that marvelously. I like that. And then the
Yeah,
shaking does as well. What I like about the shaking is the tapping is willful. It's I'm tapping myself.
exactly.
But the shaking is really about this permission, about this allowing it to happen.
Hmm.
So if you've ever seen a rabbit escape a fox, to
Hmm.
the prey that has escaped the predator, there's kind of this neurochemical cocktail of adrenaline, of cortisol, that is released because it's infused throughout the body, and it causes this shaking. So the rabbit shakes. It doesn't have to think about it, and it doesn't say, now I need to shake because I just had this overwhelming experience. It just does it. And that
Exactly.
we're animals, and we do that
Uh-huh.
too when we allow ourselves. So Dr. Berselli, who developed these exercises, so brilliantly
Hmm.
saw that unfortunately in life-threatening situations, he traveled to places that had been war-torn or experienced natural disaster, that in those places,
Hmm.
people automatically had the experience of shaking because they needed to release. And they automatically bypassed all of the systems that shut them down. I need to be polite. I need to hold it together. I need to, constrict and constrain myself. But when we actually allow, as Dr. Brazzelli observed in these war-torn experiences, when life was imminently threatened, that there was this release,
Hmm.
and that the shaking happened. And the shaking again happens wherever there's stress in the physiology. So that is, why physical
Wow.
manipulation is good. Like we go to get massages because we're wearing our shoulders like earrings, or we tap on ourselves and we have that experience of release. But the shaking is an internal mechanism that's based in our biology that happens to all animals, all sentient beings, I would say, that this experience of shaking can be a release. So it's an amazing modality, I believe.
That's great. Maria Jose from Guatemala, she's tuning in. It's great to have you here, Majo. She says she loves shaking and that she does it every
Yes,
day.
I love it. Great.
Yeah, and she's asking, she does it, but she's asking if that's part of TRE. She wants to know a little
Yes,
bit more.
yes,
Hmm.
yes. So Dr. Berselli developed these 6 exercises. So he saw in war-torn countries when people had life-threatening situations that they experienced a shaking. And he thought, well, wouldn't it be great if the experiences of accumulated trauma or tension in our bodies could be released? Because after living in our biology for decades, we need a release. And he said, if we could bypass these, war-torn experiences or natural disasters and just engage that mechanism in an effective way, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have that restoration of our nervous system? So he developed these 6
Wow.
simple exercises that go in a progression that are, I would say, deceptively simple, that allow us to engage the voluntary muscles so the involuntary muscles can become engaged, and then the shaking happens. So if you're able to do this without the exercises, that for me is the hope for all human beings. But the exercises are a pathway to that, so that you have that experience, Maria, of shaking, and that you are allowing yourself to have that. What a wonderful gift, that is part of our inherent wisdom.
Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I love it. I put on the chat box the website from Dr. Berchelli so people can know a little bit more about it. I know you do it and
Beautiful.
you practice, but so people can read about, yeah, like more in depth. But
Yes.
but but anyway, I think it's amazing. And if you guys have another question about it, it's important that you do it because now, I mean, that's why we're here for. So, and I want to ask you guys, this is to the audience. Do you know and understand your body? Or you're still learning, like what are the signs, the emotions, everything around it? And well, you tell us that. I want to ask Tara if you can give us a little bit more information and how a TRE works. I mean, you're saying about the shaking, about these exercises, like how's the whole process when you learn it to do it in yourself? And if it's just one time or is depending on situations that you do it often or you should do it, I don't know, once a day, once a week, or how does it work?
Yeah, great questions. So the way I like to suggest people use the modalities really comes from Dr. Berselli. I trained with him for a number of years, and I just think he's such a brilliant, compassionate human being. And what he recommends is that you do it once a day, and it's not a one and done deal. It is a
Mhm.
practice, and it is a process that you inhabit because our bodies, as we live in this world, experience tension and we experience stress. And so
Mhm.
the opportunity to have this shaking experience, I would say 15 to 20 minutes a day of the actual shaking, is very beneficial. The exercises lead up to that, so they add time, at least initially, but it is again about the allowing. So once you're able to accept and give yourself permission to have the experience of shaking, 15 or 20 minutes is sufficient. And then I would do that on a daily basis for at least 3 weeks, because then you're really making an impact in your lifestyle. And then once you've done that, to really do it on a basis that works best for you. Maybe it's twice a week. Maybe it's a particularly
Mhm.
stressful week because you've had some discord in your relationship with your beloved, or maybe you've
Mhm.
had some stress at work, and so then maybe you need to do it 3 times. And to be curious, I always invite wonder. I think welcoming wonder in how we explore things is huge. And so coming into, is it work better at night, or does it work better in the morning? Does this enliven my
Exactly.
system, or does it relax me and I want to go to sleep? And so
Mm,
try it on and explore it. There is no
that's so
necessarily
cool.
wrong way of doing it. It's just,
Mhm.
if you're curious, I would say. So the invitation to do it satisfactorily is really allowing yourself to be curious and to understand what works for your physiology. So what may work for you, Stephanie, is different from what may work for me. So we're just observing what
Exactly.
happens within our body.
I love that. I love that. And Maho is asking, asking something. I think it's a very, very good question. Well, first she says thank you for if shaking was part of TRE, and her question is how safe is it? I have a student in yoga. She's a yoga teacher, by the way, and she has had a terrible trauma lately. So how would you recommend that? I mean, how safe is? I know tapping is really safe. It's one of the best methodologies to work trauma because it's not invasive
Yes.
and it doesn't trigger other things that sometimes some processes does. So how does this work in this sense?
For myself, I love it. I have tried other modalities, and I think that this for me works the best. But I think it's important that you make that assessment yourself. I don't think there's anything negative that will happen from it. What I do know is that if you, sometimes we come from the approach
Hmm.
that more is better. And I know a man who was a sniper who had a lot of trauma in his physiology from the work that he did in the military, and so he thought
Hmm.
more is better, so he shook a lot. So the first time he shook for 2 hours, and that is not the case. More is not necessarily better in this. And so his nervous system was hyper aroused, and it was hard then to restore it to a homeostasis that would allow him to sleep. So I think less is and more frequency is better. So the duration is 15 minutes, the frequency is increased daily. That is a beneficial way that this person, Maho, had a recent trauma, that they may want to be gentle with themselves and try it on. Try it on and shake for just maybe 2 minutes, and that may be enough. I'm saying 15, but I am not making the assessment. So you know yourself. So maybe it's only 2 minutes of shaking that you need. I think it's really important that we understand that these modalities are here to help us, but we are the active agents in our own lives, and we need to assess what works best for us. My understanding is that this is a very gentle modality for trauma. And what I also know is that it engages the psoas, which is the largest muscle that
Hmm.
connects the lower half of the body to the upper half of the body, and that the psoas is not necessarily a muscle, and that oftentimes there's some hypertonic experience in there, and that's really constricted, and that it needs to be
Hmm.
released. And so something like shaking can cause more tension in that area if we're not aware.
That's true.
And so we need to bring awareness to those parts of our body and give them love. And when we're able to do that, we're
Exactly.
approaching it in a much different way. When we say that I need to fix this because this is broken, or then that's not coming from a place of love, that's coming from a place of self-aggression, and that's never going to help us. So to really come from that place of love and then understand and feel into what works best for this individual who just had this trauma, I think that's really the best approach, Maho.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you
Mm.
so much. And Maho says, great. I will recommend her that. Sometimes less can be more. Great psoas is the fear muscle, she says. I agree. Because
Yes.
we in yoga we tend to work a lot on that to release it. And yeah. and
Mm-hmm.
people cry.
Yeah, yes. I just studied with Liz Cook. Her last name is
Mhm,
Cook, Koch, and she does SOAS work, and her work is called Core Awareness. And the depth of knowledge that she has shared, I feel like blew my mind because I could see the limitations of the trauma prevention exercises. I love them, and I tend to think I see them as a panacea because I think that they're benign and only
mhm,
beneficial. But I knew someone recently who was um, experiencing, I would say, a triggering of their trauma through mm, the trauma releasing exercises because their psoas was so constricted. And so the way that Liz Cooks works with that is she works with restorative, I would say, exercises that are like rest exercises. So it's similar to
mm,
yin yoga, where you're taking these postures for longer periods and really slowing things down or engaging in, I would say, restorative postures for longer periods are so deceptively simple that are antithetical to so much of the fastness and speed of our culture. And they are so healing, so truly healing.
wow,
So I highly recommend her work about the release of the psoas. It's been, yeah, phenomenal for my own work.
excellent. The release of the source. I'm going to see if I can look the link so I can share it with the audience and they can have a look at it.
Yeah, I think
Amazing.
it's coreawareness.com.
Okay.
Just phenomenal.
Perfect. Excellent. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really awesome, and it's going to help a lot of people. And
Yes.
yeah, Maho is saying, yeah, restorative yoga is the best. That's what she teaches. She's
I
into
love it.
therapeutic yoga. So yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
We have Lori Reggio here. It's so great to have you, Lori. Thanks for the
Hi,
resource. Nice to see
Lori.
both of you. She's great. It's so good to have you here, Lori.
Yes, thank you. So sweet.
So, I want to ask the audience, what other questions you have here for Tara? You have to take advantage that she's here. And we're going to move to a very interesting topic. I mean, what we've been talking has been very interesting. But so you know, for the people that arrive a little bit later, we're talking about sex and trauma prevention with Tara Galeano, an American certified sex therapist. So if you want to find out more about our programs online and the different trainings I have, I'm going to put the link of my email there and the link of my webpage. So, continuing with this amazing conversation, Tara, I wanna ask you, how does sex release stress?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a great question. So I was looking at the title and sex and trauma prevention. We just want to prevent the trauma, but not the sex.
Of course, of course.
Of course, yes. Yes, because sex is a great stress relief. As a sex therapist, most of my clients are actually not having sex, and it's such a struggle in their relationship. They're living together as roommates, and they have so many elements of their life working together. But it is a piece about how do they connect in an intimate, fulfilling, satisfying way that seems to evade them. And what we know about sex is that the cardiovascular benefits are there, and that it releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So we're able to have that experience of attachment to our beloved or the person that we're having sex with, and that there's so many
Mhm.
benefits of a release of stress from the sexual act. And that yeah, I'm happy to answer more questions on that, but that's what I can say overall.
Wow, wow. And here I want to ask a question regarding, like that our topic today, sex and trauma prevention. When we have traumas and sometimes related to sex, um, I have like many questions there. I don't know which one to start with. I'm going to say one, and you tell me if you want to start with that one or we go somewhere else. But um, sex can be very traumatic, for some people,
Yes.
And depending
Yes.
on, obviously, on situations, if it's different, if it's a rape, then it's a, but anyway, it can be traumatic even though it's not a rape. So I
Yes.
want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about that. So to, kind of like take
Mm.
that, I don't know, sometimes it's, people don't talk about it, but sometimes sex can be traumatic without being a rape. So if you can tell us a little bit about this and how can we approach it as women, how to see it natural and not feeling ashamed or anything because the situation might have been traumatic for us. And then the question would be, how can we prevent that trauma from happening?
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful question, Stephanie. I think that that, for me, is really foundational to the work that I do. And it's not that so many women are coming into my practice because of violent trauma, such as
Mhm.
rape, but they are all too familiar, I would say, by and large, of unwanted sexual contact or unwanted sexual touch. And I think a lot of it has to do with consent. And so much culturally is happening around the Me Too movement, which I think has grown from anger from women and the need to set a boundary, which I so
Yeah,
applaud. Yes, we need to set boundaries as women. And I also
yeah.
think that the work that I do is helping women create and cultivate this sense of agency within their own lives so they can say yes to pleasure and listen to their bodies, know their bodies, and then love their bodies. And that through that progression is really great work and great self love. And that when we're not in a place where we're not able to articulate and identify, or maybe identify and articulate our own pleasure, then we can never
Mhm.
honestly share that with another human being because we don't know. And so we
Exactly.
really need to know what it is that is our pleasure, not just for ourselves, but to really make this cultural shift so violations against women don't happen because women are really clear of this is pleasurable to me and that is not. And I think when we get into that gray area, oftentimes women allow things to happen that they're not really okay with, if you will, but they allow
Mhm.
it to happen because they don't know how to set the boundary because they're not so clear on what is pleasurable. And I think
Yeah.
that exploration begins for each individual woman. And then when we know that, then we can pass it down to our daughters and our granddaughters who so vitally need this knowledge.
Exactly. No, and now that you're saying this, I think it's not only about setting boundaries, but about sometimes is you wanna give pleasure to your partner, and by doing
Yes.
so, you're not really giving pleasure to yourself,
Yes.
and that's when it can be traumatic because it's like, okay,
Yes.
I'm doing this for you because I love you, and you kind of like mix things in your head that it has nothing to do
Yes.
with love, but it as well
Yes.
has to do with, okay, what do I like? And it's fair to say, I don't like this. I like that. I enjoy, but at this I don't like. I know you like it, but how can we do it that it's maybe we do this less or something?
Yes, yes. Well, and that's so beautifully said is that I don't like this. Sometimes, especially when we're in a highly aroused, intimate situation, which is, I would say, when we're heightened in that way, either through anger or lovemaking, that it's hard to differentiate of, I don't like this, oftentimes can sound like, I don't like you, because we're
Yeah.
so in such an aroused state, which is not our normal homostasis. And so, really
Yeah.
hearing our beloved because we understand what it is that we ourselves like and what we know about ourselves, then we can hear, I don't like this. But that conversation in a very intimate setting is so difficult, and we don't receive that learning. We don't receive that education by and large. It's a rare individual who gets that and has known that from an early age on forward, that they can claim their sexual sovereignty because they can identify and know their own pleasure. And that's a huge piece of the work that I do. I want to do a paradigm shift, that we are not focused on the other to receive pleasure, but we're focused on ourselves, because it's only through that reclamation of our own pleasure can we really give and receive pleasure with another. That we're focused goodness, so much on the pleasure of the other person creates a lot of problems. And it's not just for women, it's for men as well. I see
No,
that in
it's
issues of erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation is the focus, then causes performance anxiety, where they're wondering about how they're showing up for the other and not noticing how they're showing up for themselves, just the anxiety around it. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and that's when stress and anxiety arises and they don't neither performs well. And it's not about performing, neither feels right. The
Yes.
whole sexual experience is really bad for both because neither of
Yes.
them first know their bodies and second they're focusing on the other instead of focusing on themselves and really go
Yes.
from a place of self-love, I would say, right?
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I
Mhm.
absolutely wholeheartedly agree. Yes, so that needs to begin with the love that we have for ourselves, and then we can easily share that with others, whomever
Mhm.
we choose.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, it's up to us, but we need to know ourselves first in order to be able to say, I like this, I don't like this, I prefer this, I don't really go into this, you know?
Yes, yes.
Hmm. That's great. Well, Maho is saying, have you been able to work via Zoom? It would be difficult to hold a safe space and have a personal rapport.
Yes, so I work with Zoom. I'm hosting a TRE event next week. I host it monthly. I find that Zoom is actually quite effective for the trauma releasing exercises because it allows me to really zoom in on the individuals and get a closer experience of to see where the shaking is in their body. What I love about this is then I can identify, I see this, and what is your experience? Oftentimes, what I'm seeing
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily match what it is their experience, what their experience is, but it gives them the opportunity to check in. Ah, yes, now that you say that, now that I'm being observed, I do notice that. So I find Zoom to be very effective. And then in terms of the work that I do as a sex therapist, I think yes, it creates very intimate conversations. It does, I think, cause secondary problems with, we as human beings sometimes have problems with body image about how we see ourselves on video. So if you're not comfortable seeing yourselves on video, I think there's an adjustment to that. But that's great grist for the mill, to bring it into, the sex therapy session, because that is a piece of, one of the biggest sexual inhibitors that we experience, particularly as women, is body image. So if we have a lower sense of our body image, then we're not going to be as sexually expressive. We're not going to initiate sex as much. So I think there's some benefits to work through Zoom so we can start to address those issues and mitigate them.
That's great. I completely, yeah, agree with you. It's yeah, it can be very intimate. I mean, depends on how you use Zoom, it can be very good tool.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm including Tara's contact information if you're curious about going to a TRE class and see how it works. There's her webpage and as well the Facebook page, so you can get in contact with her after this Facebook Live. She's amazing. So if you're going to try TRE with her and these exercises, you will have an amazing time. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have more questions or if you want to comment on what you've been learning today and if you have had any aha moments of what we've been talking about, if something relates to your life and that you want to share. This is open, so if you want to share, it's perfect. If not, it's okay as well. And I want to remind you that these Facebook Lives will stay open to the public, so you can share it with people that you think would benefit. And you can also watch it again. However, I also have my YouTube channel that I recently launched, so you can have it available there. Uh, Probably at the end of today, maybe if not tomorrow, but then you can watch there again. And if you want to see our previous Facebook lives, you can see them all there. So I left you the link. And I want to ask you, Tara, if you have something else you would like to tell the audience that's very important regarding this topic of sex and trauma prevention, because at the end, what we need is to um, prevent trauma. Obviously, if it's a rape, it's a different thing. And I don't know if you want to talk about that as well, or what is your recommendation if someone recently had a, or not recently, but maybe it's working still on a trauma regarding rape.
Hmm. I'm goodness. I feel like that's a huge topic in our society, and I feel that deeply. I remember one of the hardest moments I had was when my 11-year-old daughter, who's not 11 anymore, but when she was 11, asked me what the word rape was. And I think, goodness, that's, what I envision for all of us as humans is that we never have to define that word for our children ever, because
Mhm.
nobody deserves to be violated in that way.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
have been, to know that you were never supposed to be violated in that way. Nobody is. And that
Yeah.
you deserve so much love. We all deserve so much love. And the way that it begins is we need to love ourselves enough to know that's true, so that will never happen again to anybody.
Mhm.
And there are so many tools and so many loving people to help show the pathway forward. And that my path in this lifetime is to help people who've been violated or have had unwanted sexual contact or experience to know deep, profound pleasure. But it is not limited to just those people, but all people, that we all need to know deep divine pleasure within our bodies, and that it's so possible, and that I do know that it can go beyond our wildest dreams, and that our imagination sometimes limits the possibilities of what that pleasure can be like. And that is our divine birthright.
That's so true. Yeah,
Yes.
that's so true. And we forget.
And we forget, yes. So we're
Mhm.
here to remind everybody.
That's right. That's right. That's our work.
Mhm. Yes,
We're
thank
great
you.
human beings. And so I love
Mhm.
your words, Tara. I think this Facebook Live was amazing. For
Mhm.
your knowledge or what you share, TRE, it's an amazing tool. I haven't tried it, so I need to go to one of your classes to try the
Love
exercises.
it.
It would be
Mhm.
fun. So I want to thank you for being here today as my special guest. I love the topic. I think it's a topic that all of us as women need to work more on, and understanding our bodies and how what
Yes.
we like, what we don't like, how we like it, and everything. So thank you so much for everything you taught us today. And I want to ask you if you have some final words to the audience today.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It has been such an honor to have this conversation with you. I really enjoyed it, and I loved connecting with your audience as well, and feeling my own passion and feeling like this is just such important work, that we all listen to our bodies so we can know our bodies, so we can love our bodies, and so then we can share them with other people as we choose. That's what I have to say in
That's
closing.
great. I love your words. Thank you so much. It
Mm.
was great having you here today, Tara, and it was an amazing audience as well. Doing all these questions and comments. Thank you guys so much. So, my name is Ana Stephanie Munoz. I'm a transformational coach on stress and expert in stress management. So, I want to thank you all for being here today, and I hope to see you next week. So, thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Bye bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye. Thank you.